Alright guys, welcome back to my fresh run of Division 1. Now this is a new character that I'm basically just taking through the story all over again for the umpteenth time. I've kind of lost count at this point how many times I've created characters and just, played through the game, or at least played partially through the game to create a character for, a specific Dark Zone level or something like that. I've done it a few times, and, the funny thing is, this is something that I could never really do in Division 2. Division 1 just had a lot more replayability to me as far as, creating a new character goes. And from that aspect, I really enjoy it because, sometimes it just gets a little bit stale farming for gear, trying to min-max, builds and stuff like that. And I just like going through, having this fresh experience, maybe playing a little bit differently, trying out new things that I didn't try out, previous times, or using, builds that I just kind of didn't like before. It's just interesting to me. The fact that I can actually do this in Division 1, but I have no urge to do this in Division 2. It's just kind of, it's a little funny to me. Now I do want to talk about a couple things in this video. The first one being, look, I know, a lot of you guys have probably played through Division 1 already, but there's people that probably just went into Division 2 and never played Division 1. Now, to those people, whatever reason it is that you didn't play Division 1, or maybe you're just, gave up on it quite early, you found the game was dead, you couldn't matchmake, and you kind of gave up on it. Look, I'm not here to, tell you that you have to play Division 1, otherwise you don't know what you're doing. No. I mean, if you didn't enjoy it, that's perfectly fine. But for some of those people who maybe you just need a little bit of a, punch in the arm, or maybe you just need a little bit of encouragement to go through the game, that's kind of what I want. I want people to experience Division 1. And because I think Division 1 did, in many ways, a better job than Division 2. Now, not everything's better. Not everything's, like the quality of life improvements in Division 2 were probably better than Division 1. But that's just kind of surface stuff. At the core of the game, I think Division 1 had a lot more interesting stuff to it. Had a lot more heart to it. It really felt like they were just making a RPG, making a shooter that was kind of cohesive, I guess. It really felt like it was a good combination of the genres. And when they went into Division 2, they kind of, I don't know, it really felt like they sacrificed a lot of their ideas to just make it a more streamlined game. And that's what really rubs me the wrong way with Division 2. Now, just to kind of clarify some things, in this run, I'm not really utilizing any of my, currencies that I've gathered on my main characters. So I really am trying to do this as a fresh run. I'm trying to, buy only, specific items if I think I've actually, sold enough items to actually have that much money. I'm not trying to, go out every time I level up to basically spam buy, different items. That way I'm legitimately playing it fresh. I don't want it to feel like, oh, you can't do this because I've got so much money and there's no way you could possibly, complete this stuff as easy as I am, or, have the builds that I am when I do. And, it's just, I'm trying to keep it, fair and balanced. So most of the stuff that I use is stuff that I found. And the only time I really buy anything is, multiple levels after, my gear is pretty much obsolete. So like if I've gotten, to level, let's say, I think when I was at level like 24 or something like that, I still had gear that was like level 19, maybe even lower. So I ended up buying some stuff finally because, I just needed better equipment. And of course, when I do need to, I do actually farm for the stuff. So, at one point I did go into the Dark Zone. I didn't really see any players in there, but I did end up, farming some currency, farming some levels to get equipment that I could actually use. Now, again, the reason I say this is because, I don't want you to think that I'm just like boosting my character so I'm having an easier time through it. No, I'm pretty much using what I get. And that's kind of one of the fun things about going through the game again, fresh, because I'm, experiencing what the game is giving me. And I'm trying to make the best out of what it gives me. So a lot of the time my build is, kind of just ad hoc. It's just a mess of different things that I've found that, whatever is best suited for me at the time. Sometimes I might get a higher level piece of gear, but, it just doesn't work out for me. It's not really what I'm trying to go for, or maybe, I hold on to it for another build. Maybe I'm trying to switch up every, so often just to keep things fresh. So if you're thinking like, oh, he's just using these pre-planned builds, or he already knows what he's doing, and there's no way that like I could do this. Again, it's not really up to me. It's really just up to luck. Picking what I think is going to work, and just kind of trying to keep it as simple and easy as possible for myself. Because obviously, when you're running through a story, whether it's Division 1 or Division 2, a lot of the times you're trying your best to make a build, but you don't really have the ability to make a full-on build. You're just kind of trying to put pieces together in a way that makes sense. So that's what I'm doing. I'm enjoying that process again, and I'm just kind of switching it up as I go through. But now, it was specifically about this mission. This is one of the missions that I rather enjoyed, and I think this mission in particular kind of highlights a little bit of the differences between Division 1 and Division 2 as far as level design. Now, in Division 2, one of the things that you'll pretty much notice is it really feels like everything's fake. That's the impression that I get. It really feels like the level design has been manufactured in a way. And in Division 1, a lot of the stuff feels a little bit more natural. Now, obviously here I'm in the refugee camp. This is like a train station, some sort of like industrial train depot type thing. And what you're going to see is it's a lot of barrels, a lot of, transportation equipment, obviously trains, so like the setting of it doesn't really feel like it's completely fictional, right? It doesn't seem like they just put things in the way just to put things in the way. And this kind of almost natural chaos that they have in the missions of Division 1 feel a lot better for a couple reasons. Now, one of the things that really disappointed me about Division 2 was in regards to how snipers perform. Now, I'm not saying you can't use snipers in Division 2. They can be effective. But a lot of the times, the levels are designed in such a compact way. They are designed with, so much just junk and clutter, especially like tall clutter for no apparent reason, where it basically just stops you from being able to, be an effective sniper, because there's just so much stuff in the way. Your sight lines are very, very short most of the time. And this mission, especially in this area specifically, really highlights this kind of depth of level design, where you can actually see a large area around you. You can snipe at, most enemies in the area. You might need to reposition a little bit, but you can be an effective sniper. Obviously, like I've just talked about with Division 2, a lot of the stuff is, despite the actual DC area being more open, right? Obviously, the buildings are shorter, the roads are a lot wider, there's a lot more parks and stuff like that. And so in the open world, Division 2 does have a little bit more, openness to it in general. But when it comes to the missions, a lot of the stuff in Division 2 is very small, very compact, very cramped. Most of the rooms are, again, very small. And obviously, it's not necessarily the developer's fault. If they're going off of source material, there's not really, there's some leeway that they can have, right? But there's not much they can actually do to change, the structures of a building. If a building is this big, well, all they can really do is make it, make rooms, to fit inside of it. That's pretty much the best they can do. A lot of times it wasn't just, the missions weren't just dedicated to being inside of a specific building. Like in this mission, it's the entire, campus of this area. And that allows them to avoid, the limitations of just being trapped inside of a monument or a building. And this in turn allows for different builds to be, more effective. Like snipers in Division 1 just felt more effective. They felt more free. They felt more fun and enjoyable. And a lot of this is just because of the simple level design. Some of it has to do with the AI mechanics. I think in Division 2, the AI tend to be a little bit quicker to take cover, tend to be a little bit more jumpy. In Division 1, I'm not saying that, the AI were, complete idiots, but you also had these enemies that did allow you to actually snipe them a little bit more easily. Now, if you saw my run-through of Subway Morgue, one of the things that I did, talk about was the fact that, for the cleaners, a lot of their missions don't really have that visceral fire type design to them. And this one, the main plot of this level is, fire based and kind of interesting. They're trying to clean out this virus camp, but again, a lot of it just, the fire aspect is still missing. And that was kind of something that disappointed me. Again, just the cleaners in general, the kind of lack of this fire-based faction really being a fire faction, that kind of bothered me. I really wish, they really had a great opportunity here to, use a lot more intricate designs, not just necessarily like a set, not just necessarily a set and forget fire trap, but they could have had a lot more interesting, just destructible mechanics in this level, a lot more, use of exploding barrels or tankers or stuff like that. Well, anyway, I completely lost my train of thought here just because the dang rooster was outside the window creating so much noise that, obviously I don't want to include rooster crowing all over everything I'm talking about. But anyway, I actually did enjoy this mission quite a bit. And I enjoy the fact that there's actually like civilians in there, the fact that the civilians are running away trying to escape from the cleaners, they're all being herded up, so that the cleaners can just dump the napalm on them. It's a nice touch that I really feel is missing from Division 2. A lot of the life in Division 2 isn't really there. Now, obviously, there's differences in the setting and the way that they wanted the game to feel, but in Division 1, right, it really felt like you were there to save the city, to rescue these people, to, do what you could to, save what remained. In Division 2, it really felt like no one wanted you or no one needed you, and it was just kind of like, why am I even here? Like, all these civilians are doing their own thing. They're all, like, grumpy as hell. They don't really like the Division. Paul Rhodes is, in Warlords of New York became... he went from being kind of funny and engaging in Division 1 to just kind of being a grumpy douche in Division 2. I really hated the way that he went. And then... Benitez kind of just became like a whipping boy. Like he was just like, whatever. I'm here still. I don't know. It just amused me to no end. But the fact that Division 1 and Division 2 had these different styles to them. I just didn't appreciate the style of Division 2. I didn't appreciate the fact that we're just there for really no reason. We're there basically to like advance this sort of political plot. And it just didn't feel good. Like Division 1 felt like a division. It felt like this embodiment of a pandemic world. It felt like you are really trying to, rescue this city from disaster. And in Division 2, that feeling is largely missing. It doesn't hit the right buttons for me. Now, I'm not saying that the gameplay was, completely awful. I'm not saying that, everything was just completely terrible about it. But a lot of, what I've been talking about is the heart of the game. And Division 1, really just did feel like it had heart. It really did feel like it just had, this environmental, like, impact on your actual, story, on the characters, on everything. It felt good. But, anyway, here, just taking a quick look at, what I'm using. Obviously I'm not using anything special. I'm just using, greens, blues when I get them at this point. Obviously I'm only level 7, so I've gotten a few blues. But anyway, the whole heart of what I'm using is kind of just built around firearms. Like in Division 2, when that game came out, I kind of said, just ignore pretty much everything, just go into firearms and red rolls. And that's pretty much true for Division 1. And a lot of this is actually because... through all the various balancing patches and all of the changes and all the updates and everything that Division 1 went through. It's unfortunate, but the base game, the actual, 1 to 30 missions, really just never got adjusted correctly. So anytime they nerfed something for the level 30 endgame, anytime they ruined something or killed something, they didn't take into account how it was going to affect the actual story game. And that sucked. A lot of the skills early on are really terrible. They're not good. They don't feel good. Being a skill build early on isn't very effective because, the cooldowns are so much longer. You can't really get anywhere with your cooldowns, and that basically just makes your skills pretty useless. It doesn't really matter which one. they're all kind of terrible. I mean, you're looking at like, sometimes almost 40 seconds of cooldown for some of your attack abilities. And even if you max out all into skill power, you still have such high cooldowns that it's almost unusable. I mean, you'd have to basically just sit and cover even more than skill builds already do, and you don't really have the ability to push. You don't really have the ability to really bring it to the enemy, and that's unfortunate. So again, when these developers are doing all this stuff, I really do get annoyed that they don't take the time to consider how a new player is going to come into the game and experience the game themselves. Like it doesn't come across as a very fun and enjoyable experience trying to level up these things, only to discover that at this point they're useless. And that's that was one of the biggest problems with Division 2. When it launched, the skills were useless. The one of the features was the mods, but you couldn't get any of these mods until like you were level 10. So the whole 1 to 10, your skills were pretty much garbage. Like you didn't matter if you invested into skill power. Or, yeah, I think it was skill power back then. If you invested into skill power, you couldn't use it for anything. It didn't mean anything because obviously all the power was due to your level and to your mods. So going 1 through 10, you didn't have any bonuses that you could put on your skills. So it didn't make any difference to be a skill build or not. In fact, being a skill build at level 5 basically meant that you were just wasting stats for no reason. And I hated that. And in Division 1, obviously, it's not like that. But that sentiment is still kind of there because they nerfed everything. A lot of these skills early on don't really, see their potential. You can't really judge how effective these things are going to be for later game because they're bad. The cooldown, again, is bad. Some of the damage can be okay, but with that huge cooldown and no real weapon damage or stamina, no health to speak of, you're a glass cannon without a cannon. That's basically kind of how it rolls. So I didn't like that. I didn't like that at all. So going through the story completely fresh, when this game launched, is a completely different experience. My memories of how good it was, how fun it was, is a completely different experience to how it is now. Just because of the revamps that they did to all of the stats, all the gear, all of the enemy bracketing and health and all that stuff. So it is a vastly different experience. Now, I would consider that my first time running through the Division, actually my first 4 times running through the Division, that first month or two, were rather enjoyable. They were fun. I loved going through it. But even though I don't think that running through the campaign is as good as it was, I still find it more enjoyable than Division 2's campaign. Now, another interesting thing to note, survival is kind of one of these cult favorites. I don't really like survival that much, but a lot of people do. But obviously, survival is based on kind of going from level 1 gear to roughly level 30 at world tier 1. So I think you can get 163, 164, something like that is your max gear score. But they nerfed a lot of the skills and a lot of talents and stuff like that after survival came out. So I remember survival and a lot of this stuff was effective. Shield builds in survival were actually pretty effective. And some other different skills were rather good too. But after they did all the updates, after they nerfed things and especially nerfed skills, a lot of the players that actually ran survival started kind of basically just gravitating towards the same stuff. So it basically just became a lot of mostly DPS builds with some stamina. That's pretty much what everyone gravitated to because, again, the skills became sort of useless in that phase. You really needed to be level 30 with classified sets for skills to feel good, or you at least needed a good cohesive build with 4-piece tactician, a Barrett's chest piece, and the one backpack that gave you 15% skill power for when you're at full health. So you needed that stuff to kind of make a good build if you didn't have the classifieds. But obviously that stuff isn't really in the cards now. So a lot of that, world tier 1 stuff that Division 1 survival focuses on, really just got crippled, and basically just didn't feel good anymore to run a skill build a lot of the times. So, that's something that I noticed that, maybe you might notice, maybe you might, just kind of be like, why is this, this doesn't feel good to me. And what I can tell you is, if you are a hardcore skill build, if that's what you really want to play, you want to play some, a little bit more different combinations rather than just, the typical DPS type builds, you're going to have to wait a little bit. You're going to have to give it some time. You're going to have to make it to level 30, get to world tier 5, get these classified sets. And that's where you're going to start actually encountering skill builds that really do feel good. They do feel like they have a good amount of power to them. If you do get lucky and you manage to happen to get like a, regular tactician build, you can still have fun with it. Yeah, I mean, I'm not going to say they're completely garbage and they're completely worthless, but that power cap does definitely come into play with the classified gear sets and skills. Because obviously that's where they tuned everything to. They wanted those to be where, the full power was, and they wanted them to be barely effective in PvP. So what ended up happening was all of these, nerfs at the top really hammered the stuff at the bottom and made it kind of less than ideal. It's not as good as it is at level 30, and it can be rather difficult to run before then. But it can still be fun depending on, how you play, what you actually expect from the game. It's just a little bit more challenging than you're probably used to as an endgame character at, level 40 in Division 2. But either way, I think it's great. I think you guys should, jump into this, try it out. Just, see the differences for yourselves between the games. You may not enjoy it at first. You may, think it's a little bit of a struggle to, jump into it. But look, stick with it for a while. I'm pretty sure that you will enjoy it and you will have a good time, and you'll, find a love for this game, and maybe even see some of the things that Division 1 did better that you really wish, was in Division 2 now. Maybe you get some ideas, so when you leave feedback on the forums or, on Reddit or, whatever, tweet that one of the developers puts out there, when you leave this feedback, you'll have a better understanding of just what kind of thing you might want to, enjoy, how you like the design of Division 1 or over Division 2. Just kind of, subtle things like that. But anyway, thank you guys for watching. I'll see you in the next one.
JTF dispatch requesting backup. Multiple hostages reported at an electronics store on 11th. Priority 1, repeat, priority 1.